So the fences I would first put in a broader perspective of work we've been doing from a public health approach at Gannett for over 10 years, which really involves looking at the educational environment, looking at teaching students how to interact, develop social connections, develop life skills. And then one piece of this that we've really started to look at since this last spring is means restriction, which if you look at any of the research in suicide, it's an area that's really gotten a lot more attention, that a big piece of a clinical response or even a public health response to suicide is taking away immediate means to someone completing a suicide. In most settings, you see means restriction as a strategy. How do you have, like most campuses ban firearms from campus, or they provide lockers for gun owners on campus, so there's a way it's safer. And one of the things that is unique to our setting here in Ithaca and at Cornell University is our campus is surrounded by these beautiful gorges, and a vastly higher number of completed suicides occur through jumping from the gorge edges or from the bridges. So we're really confronted with this unique challenge of how do we bring means restriction in this unique environment? From a research standpoint, some of the research that's been developed over the last 5 years, the appropriate response is putting up some barriers to interrupt the impulsivity, which is also oftentimes a component to many suicides, along with a lot of other factors like anxiety, depression, relationship loss, substance use. All of those things are complex factors that play a role in suicide, but the means restriction piece is really attacking that impulsivity component.
It was appropriate for the university community to respond, which I think they did quickly and very thoughtfully by placing guards on the bridges and by providing extra mental health services on the campus. And it's, I think, taking what was an acute response to a possible condition and translating it into a permanent installation, which I think mars the campus, mars the university's reputation, and is to be discouraged.
If you take the broader pictures, is this the best solution? Is this a sort of knee-jerk reaction, a panic reaction to solve a PR or recruiting problem for Cornell? People in the community felt very concerned about that they were getting railroaded into approving a certain set of solutions that might not be good for Ithaca as a whole. The other concern was, and we actually already saw this happen, is that if we went ahead and put up barriers on some of the bridges to prevent jumping suicides, that people would just go elsewhere. And in fact, what's happened is we've already had, I think it was a Cornell student, a graduate student, in fact, who committed suicide over the Taganic Falls Bridge. So it extends out of the campus, and that's very unfortunate as well.
The question that I'm trying to solve is, do you want fences? And if you do, how do we do this the best we can? We didn't want to approach the design problem with any preconceptions. Granted, we thought that a net design underneath the bridge, similar to what's employed or it's being thought of for San Francisco, would have to be explored. Some kind of rail system would probably need to be explored. But we put a third one in as a wild card. There might be something that we couldn't imagine, and we wanted to provide that opportunity to explore that. What we did over the last several months was we had an ongoing discussion with the community, sharing these designs that included some rail systems, some net systems. In fact, and even for the Stone Arch Bridge, because of its special, iconic quality, we even went with a glass system in terms of exploring how that would actually work.
I think that it would make a lot of people happy if there were a permanent solution to a fence, and I think that if it can be done well enough, if there's the right architect or if it can be executed in a way that it's actually art or architecture or something, but if it looks as contrived or just out of place as it does now, then that's a problem.
I was upset. I felt like they put them up behind our backs. I didn't think they would be effective, but then one of my good friends, I was talking to him about it. We were both really close with Matt Zika, who was the last person to die before they put the fences up. We were talking about it, and he said, "Hey, there's kind of some evidence that, it could be effective. I think maybe if they had been put up a day earlier, maybe Matt would have thought again." And I was like, I didn't really see them until then as an effective prevention.
At first I was just annoyed by them. I guess like everyone else was. I wasn't sure that they would be as effective as the administration said they were. I'm still not sure if they've been effective or not. There's really no way to tell. As of now, I guess I've gotten used to them. When I walk on the bridges, I don't really mind them anymore.
The effectiveness is often measured in terms of suicides from the site of the barrier, but ignores the notion of the rate effect in the larger community. So if you dissuade someone from using a bridge as a place in which to commit suicide, that doesn't mean that that person hasn't gone somewhere else and chosen a different method of committing suicide.
Yes, I think the person-to-person contact is ultimately the best. However, that's a lot of territory to cover. It's a lot of people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is a long time for people to be out there, and has its own stressors and strains. So we're just trying to come up with what's the best mitigation strategy we can employ. And certainly our officers check the bridges routinely. We're just not posted there. Certainly, I think that the statement that people make about someone really wanting to harm themselves or kill themselves is they're not going to be stopped in any way, shape, or form. I certainly agree with that. However, I'm very much aware that those fences have stopped people from making a very bad impulsive choice, have delayed their choice for a significant amount of time for people to be able to get there.
I think they decreased the aesthetic appeal of the campus, and they're kind of like a prison.
I think of suicide as being within a range of a lot of kind of psychological challenges that people face, where people try to take control of things that in a more healthy way are left to trying to accept them. And part of suicide is trying to escape those feelings, which is understandable. However, it's a very permanent solution that creates a lot of other pain, and it oftentimes is not coming from a place where the person is rational or can make the kind of decisions that they would make if a certain period of emotional kind of crises passes.
You can't say, oh, they're stressed and that's why they kill themselves. Like that's not it. There's so many factors that play into it, and it's different for every person. I know personally, I know with Matt, he'd been struggling with depression for years, and, even before he came to Cornell. And that's something that is probably true for a lot of people. Whether or not they do commit suicide, a lot of people have been struggling with depression. And stress definitely, I think it could be one of those things that throws someone over the edge. I don't think anybody kills themselves because they fail a prelim. I think that might just be the last button, but at the same time, it's important to make sure that those buttons don't get pushed.
Suicide's always a disaster. It's always a tragedy for the person who commits suicide, for the families of the person who commits suicide, and for the friends of the people who commit suicide. This can be cast in a dichotomous way to say if you're against the bridges, the bridge barriers, you're for suicide. That's absolutely ridiculous. Those of us who are against bridge barriers on the Cornell campus are also against suicide as a life choice at Cornell or any other place.
I believe that it is very unnecessary because, I'm actually more worried about the new plan that they're holding about spending millions of dollars on building new fences. I think it makes the campus I feel like I don't know, I don't think it's doing its job. I think it's very unnecessary, and I don't think it's helping at all.
I think a piece of counseling and psychotherapy or, religious exploration is really about coming to grips with what death means. And I think the reality is for all of us that if we come to grips with that, we are able to live our lives much more intentionally. That the more conscious we are of death always being something that's there, that we really can free us up to appreciate the things that we have in this moment. And that's really at the root of a lot of religious and philosophical systems, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Buddhism, focus kind of in the moment, because the moment is all we have. And death and that end really helps give meaning and value to it. So that's one of the ways I think about it, and the frameworks that I think about when I work with people in counseling and psychotherapy. And that death also can really give us a sense of the responsibility that we have in terms of how we respond, and can also help us bring value and meaning to our social connections. So, death has always been a part of who we are. It drives us as human beings in some ways that are not always very adaptive, in other ways very much adaptive, in ways that it kind of causes us and forces us to really give meaning, make conscious decisions, and connect in ways that are really important.
I think the faith experience, whatever one's faith experience may be, regardless of the tradition, deal with mortality, to deal with that the temporal and contingent and finite reality of existence that we live with, and that for us at some point in time will come to an end.
What's the point of this if 60 years from now it's not going to exist? But for me, it's about living in the moment. It's I think that our purpose, if there is a purpose to us being here, it's just to enjoy life and enjoy what is happening right now, and like the moments that you're happy, like that's why you're living, for those moments that you're happy, and eventually, it's gonna stop, but it's you just have to appreciate what we have right now. You can't let yourself think too big.
I don't know, they're whatever. Nobody's committed suicide since they've been up, so they're kind of ugly, but they're somewhat effective, I guess.
Ithaca is actually more fortunate than many, many communities because we have a wonderful sense of community here. There are so many ways you can get engaged. And if you look at people's sense of the value of a life, or their sense of having meaning in life, so much of it is about what you're involved in, what you're engaged in, what are you passionate about. And Ithaca does seem to attract a lot of people they're passionate about their intellectual pursuits, they're passionate about with food, about music, art, the outdoors. We have so many nonprofits in this town, so many ways to get involved. We have a mixed demographic population, so I actually think that throughout all ages, Ithaca is a wonderful place to be. We also have a thriving mental health community here. We've got great therapists in town. We have a suicide prevention and crisis center that's existed for many years that's one of the best around. So I think people here are pretty darn lucky on that score.
A lot of things are hard to talk about, even with your closest friends, but I try not to have any secrets that, things about, things that only I know. I feel like I have to share it with somebody. If there's something bothering you, you have to talk to somebody. And, I'm always surprised at just, how great my friends are when I'm upset. When people are upset and they're depressed about something, or they're stressed, or they're angry, or, any of these negative emotions. They're so focused on negativity, they forget all the positive people in their lives. People forget to reach out to their friends. They don't realize that they're going to be there for them, and that's not true. There's always somebody, who is there for you to reach out to, and your friends would much rather you come to them with a problem than hold it in yourself. I think that's true for anybody who's a good friend. So, I think even if it doesn't get to, if it doesn't get to, having to go to a therapist or, seeing a psychologist, or, it doesn't have to get that far. Even on a basic level, to keep your own sanity day to day, just, let your friends be there for you. I think that's the most important.